And welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com. As always, it's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I'm Paul Dottino. He is Super Bowl champion Howard Cross. So glad you could join us. And again, we are live, folks. It is so great to be live again, Howard. Last week we had some pre-recorded programs which did not allow the fans to call in. And I know they were itching. Their fingers were just getting all moldy because they couldn't hit that dial button.
Yes.
And now, folks, you got a chance. You got a chance to call in once again. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513 is our phone number for the next hour as we talk Giants football. And coming up at the top of the hour, a short segment as we continue our 2024 regular season opponent previews. We will talk about the Indianapolis Colts, a team from the AFC that the Giants will be facing on this year's schedule. But until then, the first half hour, it's you guys and it's us. And the Giants rookies who have checked into the building this morning, which, of course, they get to come in. I don't know, is this a privilege, an honor, or a more of an imposition, Howard? They come in a week before the veterans do.
I mean, if you want to come in here and get some work in and start studying and start getting the playbook and try to get things down, it's a privilege. If you are one of those guys who think you I kind of got this, I can roll with this, then it's a nuisance. But I always felt like the more time you got with the playbook, the coaches and everything, the better you would be during the season, the less thinking you could do and more reacting you could do.
Well, especially for the guys who weren't drafted highly.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever edge they can get. Well, anybody for sure, but the lower you are, the more you could use the extra work.
Well, in theory, the guys that are like the lower draft picks that are going to have to, quote unquote, hope to be on special teams or hope to be wherever, they're going to have fewer opportunities in the day-to-day practice and when it comes down to reps, offensive reps and defensive reps. So if they know the playbook inside and out by the time they get there, they don't have to guess when they get into the practice of what to do and how to do it. So that helps them out. So every rep they get is so important. They need to be good and be perfect if they can be in those reps.
All right, so folks, again, 201-939-4513. Phone lines are open for the first half hour, then again for the latter portion of the show. And in the middle, we'll talk with our representative out in Indianapolis about the Colts. As a reminder, you can find an archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. Mm-hmm. Howard, I haven't had a chance to talk to you during the 2 weeks that the office was closed. So, First of all, hope your summer's going well.
So hot, though. Very hot.
Well, we all feel like onion rings in the New York metropolitan area these days, right?
Crispy
all we need
fries.
is the breading, right?
Hot wings. I feel like hot wings.
But I did want to get a quick take from you. If, in fact, you've seen the first two shows of Hard Knocks, Max will have show 3 tonight.
I am trying to wait till it's all done. I am a consumer of things all at once. I like to see it all at once. I don't like to see like one show and then have to wait for the next show.
I believe they call that binge watching.
I'm the biggest binger on the planet. I'll turn a show on and I'll go through the whole thing. It's like House of the Dragon. I just can't watch one episode. I need like 4 or 5 episodes so I can sit up one night going like, oh, they did what? So with this, I enjoy being over here. I enjoy being a part of the team and the organization. And I feel like it'll be a better watch for me if it's all at once.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because I want to when people are talking about it, I hadn't seen it yet, I binge it. They're like, it keeps people from asking me questions.
Well, now here is the question for you, though.
And there he goes.
No, I have to ask you this. Because this is mandatory.
All right.
If you want to binge watch the program, does that mean you make extra attempts not to find out about the program? Because people no doubt want to comment to you and might say, oh, Howard, did you know this? Did you see this? What about this? Does that ruin it for you?
Well, we know everything that happened.
We do know the results,
yeah,
yes.
We do know the results, and we kind of know how things kind of go down and stuff. I just think that for the most part, as a person who likes to binge watch shows, especially sports shows, it's easier when people come to me and start talking about it. It's like, well, that's kind of this was my opinion. It's like, but that's not what the show says. I was like, I know, but this is my opinion. If you're asking me what I think, I'm just going to give you an open opinion. Then I watch the show, I'll be, oh, wow, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that. I was right about that. Mm-hmm. So that's where I kind of keep it fresh and keeps it fun because sometimes people feel like they know more than I do.
So you will wait to watch all 5 until after all 5 are in the books.
Yeah, when all 5 are in the books, it's going to be a great watch. I'll sit down one afternoon after, like the British Open is this weekend, so that'll be over with. So I won't have any more. No correction, the Open is this weekend, so I won't have any other major sporting events to watch or anything to watch. So it'll take one good afternoon coming in after a round of golf and sitting on the couch and getting into it and probably be done before the night's over.
Okay, it's about 45 minutes apiece, just so you know.
That's if it's only 5 shows, that's it. That's okay. less than most of my series that I watch.
You get a little pretzels and popcorn with that, with ice cream maybe? No.
So there's some seltzer water and just sit there and drink it.
201-939-4513 is our phone number here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Just to repeat what we said a moment ago, the rookies came in this morning, but the veterans don't actually come in until next week. The first training camp practice, Howard, is going to be on Wednesday the 24th. And by the way, that practice is as light as can be. We talk about training camp being light. Well, that first practice is ultra light.
Now, is it the thing with the union? They can only go through plays. They can't really touch each other really the first few days, and then the first day of contact. So when you say the first day of practice, you mean the first day they show up?
Yes.
So they have 3 days.
And they can get on the field. In fact, on Wednesday, if you folks are coming out, and I know the tickets are sold out, the Giants.com folks had put up an opportunity for you to explore through the internet, or should I say, go through the internet to explore, right? To go through the internet, you could apply for the free tickets. If you're coming to the day on the 24th, that day's a very light day. They'll just be in helmets, T-shirts, and shorts. Yeah,
that's the best day kind of for you to come in and watch these guys run routes and stuff and see guys. Yeah. That's a fun day for fans who like to see, guys catch passes, guys knock balls down. They're just having fun because they're just so far apart. It's just perfect.
In fact, as I'm looking at the schedule now, just let me check on, that's helmets on the 24th, helmets on the 25th, and then they put shells on the 26th. That's why they start to ramp up just a little bit.
That's perfect.
Just a little bit. 201-939-4513. Looks like we got a phone call already, so let's go right to the fans, Howard, since they'd like to chime in, and we go to, let's see, where is the list? Where's the list? I can't find it. Lucas, you are first on Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Lucas.
Hello.
Hey, how you guys doing, Howard and Paul?
Doing very well. Yourself?
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. So, I was just a little curious. Since we have such a champion in the RAS department, Theo, I was just curious as to who might have ranked, in that top 10 with him. I think he was like 6th or 7th RAS for the position all time. So I was just curious if you guys could dig in to see who was in that range with him so we can kind of see what kind of, performance his physical profile would lean towards, let's say.
You're talking about Theo Johnson, the Penn State tight end?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, who had an incredibly high RAS score. Howard, you could talk a little bit about
what is a RAS score?
The relative athletic score.
What's it do? What's it good for?
It measures all of the different gymnastics, as we say, the underwear Olympics measurements that they do at the combine, and puts them into a mathematical equation that, in theory, is going to give you a final total number that indicates the type of athlete that you are.
Okay.
You didn't have that when you came out.
No. We didn't have that. But that's cool, though. I like that.
Let me see here.
It's a predictor. But you got to remember now, Paul, and I tell people this all the time, when I came out, they were still football players, and now they're more athletes.
That is true.
And, you couldn't bring a guy in from the track to try to let him play football because it would be dangerous for him.
I'm trying to see here if on the RAS site, if they have the all-time there's
an all-time RAS list?
Well, yeah. It's been in effect now for well over a decade. Let me see if it says it here.
It measures how high they jump.
Is there another question or comment that you have while I'm looking that up? Maybe you can ask Howard something else.
I guess.
Yeah, so Howard.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you, Howard, but basically it's just a blended average of their physical, 40-time jump vertical, all that stuff into one score. My question is definitely going to lean on RAS today. I know Tracy Jr., the running back we picked up.
Yes,
he was also kind of high, so I just wanted to see who were the neighboring guys? Because I know, we're always looking for that next great running back and whatnot, like Saquon. I know Saquon must have ranked pretty high in his day, but maybe an idea for a future episode if you guys can get it. But that's all I really had, guys. I'll take it off the air. Just glad you guys are back and got some more content for us.
Okay, thank you so much for the call. All right, here we go. The top RAS scores for tight ends in the history of the RAS, which has only been around for about 15 years or so, I believe.
Okay.
Zach Kuntz of Old Dominion back in 2023 was the number one RAS score. Also, Jelani Woods out of Virginia, Anthony Becht out of West Virginia. They all scored perfect tens, and so did Jordan Garner out of Southern California back in 2011. Those guys all scored perfect tens. So did Dan Campbell. Wait a minute.
Dan Campbell scored a perfect 10?
That's what it says.
Go ahead, Dan.
Is that possible?
Again,
He was a good athlete, but was he that good?
I'm not talking about this RAS thing because I don't know nothing about it. So if I don't know anything, I need to be quiet over here.
All right, well, those are, and Mike Gesicki was a 997. Those are some of the top names according to the list.
I see Vernon Davis is a 997.
Did you see Davis too?
Okay, so Vernon Davis was a 997 and these other guys are 10s?
Well, this one says he was 994. You know what? That's okay. Here's the bottom line. These guys were amongst the top evers, and Theo Johnson from Penn State with the Giants. I believe the percentile, if I'm not mistaken, when we had the RAS expert on the show, Pearson, I believe he said that Theo Johnson was like in the 95 percentile of all-time tight ends.
I would be probably down in like the 70 percentile.
Well, I see 993 for Johnson, so that's got to be high.
It's got to be high. It's got to be high.
I'd probably like a 75 or something.
Well, which goes to the mantra.
Yeah.
If you can play, you can play, no matter what the RAS score says.
I was hurt when I was doing all that stuff, so I was I ran a slow 40 time.
Did you get hurt at the combine or before?
I got hurt before the combine. I learned to read coverages because of my ego. I played last game was against West Point.
Okay.
And they had little bitty guys out there. I was like I was very supportive because I knew they were going to be in the Army and officers.
Right.
And I was very honored to play with them, but I didn't think they could tackle and stuff. So one time they ran a seam route, and I'm like, oh, he's in the middle of the field. And coach was like, don't go in the middle of the field because the safety's there. I'm like, coach, he's like 5'10", 5'9". Like, what? Why would I look at this little dude? And I ran out there and ran across the middle, over the top. They threw me the ball. I caught it about 25 yards down the field, and I also caught him in my chest. He broke 3 of my ribs and collapsed my lung 15%.
Wow.
Yeah. And my trainer at the time, I'm not going to be bad about the trainer, but the trainer at the time was like, oh, you just got a little spasm. You'll be okay. Then when I went to the doctor the next day, they're like, dude, you kept playing? I'm like, yeah. They said I just had a spasm. They showed me the x-ray. I could see an imprint of his helmet. I'm like, okay.
Ooh.
And I'm like, how do we fix that? Well, we could drill a hole in your side to open your chest. I'm like, I'll just wait it out. And that's when the combine was.
Did you get the license plate on that bus?
I literally, what's Colonel's name that comes here from time to time?
Colonel Gadsden.
Colonel Gadsden was in that game also. I played against Colonel Gadsden.
You're serious?
I'm very serious, yeah. And I think not last year, but right before COVID or right after COVID, West Point was having a reunion. It was like, I guess since it was probably 88 when it happened, or 87, 80, I guess it was 88. It was been my senior year or whatever. They were having a reunion of that team. Colonel Gaskin and the guys, he said, would you come up for us?
Really?
And I went up to West Point, and I had to relive that play 1,000 times. They played it 100 times, and Howard Cross goes over my name, ooh! So it was kind of fun.
Did it hurt watching the video?
I didn't watch the video. I just heard the broadcast over and over and over again. I'm like, that is funny.
Wow.
Well, probably it was grainy footage. I'm so old, but it would have been funny to see it too. But I met the player. He's still met the officer. He's still a little super fit.
Is he still in the service?
Yeah. They're like, I think he's retired by now. He's about my age. So he's like, yeah, I hit you hard. I'm like, yeah, you did.
Oh man.
So
Well, that's cool
good.
that they brought you back, though.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's very cool.
It was awesome to go up there, give them support, and just be a part of it. They're a great group of guys, and even the cadets today are awesome. But just to be a part of that, part of it was so fun because they played a big school at Alabama. We won, of course, but I'm like, yeah, but he taught me to read coverages. From now, I'm like, okay, when they say don't go in the middle, don't go in the middle.
How many games did you miss that season after that hit?
None. It was my last game of my senior year.
Oh, it was?
The final, the last one of all college time. And it's the only time that I've ever played in a game and I didn't get up when they came to check on me. I just laid there for a few seconds because I couldn't breathe.
I believe it.
Yeah.
So since that was the last game of your college career, how did that impact your training for the combine?
It impacted greatly because I couldn't breathe. I had to collapse lung. I wasn't going to let them drill a hole in my side.
Good move, by the way.
I should ask. You should ask Tyrod, but just to level it out. But it just wasn't, and I'm like, it took me. I didn't really get stronger till right after the draft. Like I started to really feel myself again. I could really run again. I could really lift again. But before that, I couldn't.
So did you do anything at Pro Day? Or no?
I didn't do anything at Pro Day. I didn't do much at the combine. I mean, I ran I jogged a 40. I mean, I did like 18 or 20 bench presses.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped. Every time I do something, I'd have to go and kneel down to try to catch my breath.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough. So, but it was fun though.
So the Giants drafted you strictly on tape because obviously you couldn't test well.
They saw me do other things that they was like, okay, well, we know what you can do, so we got to draft you. Yep.
So by the time you got to training camp, you were healed.
100%. Full bore.
Thank goodness for that, because I know the kind of effort you put in. You would not have wanted to sit out.
No, you can't. You can't sit out. So yeah, it was you. Like I said, by the time I got Prince, so I guess it would have been Johnny Parker and those guys. They were
sure.
working out.
Strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah,
Remember Johnny?
They were very happy that I was here, and they could just stay here, get stronger, get your strength back. Don't just go back and forth. And I stayed here and didn't even go back to school. Stayed here and worked out every day.
Did any of your teammates know that you had spent the whole off season injured by the time you got here?
No, nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
Nobody never talked about it.
Yeah, because I don't remember hearing this story.
I never brought it up.
You're telling me that this is the first time I'm hearing this, and I've known you forever.
Yeah, I never brought it up. Never brought it up, not one time.
Wow. Sometimes you learn things, even when you've been around a long time.
The whole NFL knew I had collapsed lung and ribs. They did a lot of chest X-rays. They're like, so tell me about cover 1 or 3 or whenever a safety's in the middle. I'm like, okay, guys, it's funny enough. I got it. Don't go over the.
Oh man!
Caught a lot of jokes.
So
big guy, you're tough. I'm like, no, I'm not that tough anymore. I got it. You got it.
So did you think? And I'm guessing, and I'm not trying to be nasty, but you think it cost you a couple of rounds in the draft?
No, I never really even expected to be drafted.
You did not.
Nope. I went to college to, get a degree, to have some fun, enjoy myself. If I wasn't going to college, I was going to go to the military. I'd probably been with, Colonel Gaskin and those guys probably would have been my officers.
I've never heard this story either.
Yeah, I was just
so much about Howard I don't know, and I've known you for what, 30 years?
Yeah, I was a farm boy. I was just trying to get off the farm, and the avenues I had was play football in college, play basketball in college, run track in college, or take an academic scholarship. So I was like, one of those things was going to work out, and football was the first scholarship they offered, and I got out before planting season. So that's how I looked at it.
All right. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. Lines are open. We'll get a call in if we can before we check in with our Indianapolis Colts correspondent. In the meantime, a reminder, tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on HBO Max will be episode 3. Howard Cross will not be watching episode 3 of Hard Knocks.
Don't be coming up here on the golf course and trying to tell me stuff to try to spoil it.
But episode 3 is going to be aired tonight. Also, the Giants have announced their next segment of players in the all-time 100. They are now from 71 to 80. Is that right, Pearson? Yep. 71 to 80. That came out this morning. So they're counting backwards from 100. They're now down to 71. If you want to go to the Giants website, you get an opportunity to see some of those names. Howard, what I did want to mention to you before, and we were talking about this with training camp, and the tickets are sold out, and the practice schedule, et cetera, et cetera. The first padded practice, I believe, isn't until that first weekend. And then here's the interesting part. For the second straight year, Dan Campbell and the Lions will have a joint practice session with the Giants.
They're going to do it
on
here?
August 5th and 6th here at East Rutherford.
I'm going to come to that. That's
Leading into the Giants preseason opener against the Lions later on that week.
I got to handle Dan because he's a perfect 10 at the
I mean, that's I don't know about that. It's the internet. You can't believe everything you read on the internet, as we well know. But you were in Detroit, weren't you? You were with us last year when we went out there for the practices, weren't you?
No, I was
Or did
not.
you come late?
I came late to the game.
Okay. Because I wanted to ask you about your evaluation of what you think about these joint practices, which have become more and more nouveau as we lost that fourth preseason game.
Well, I think a lot of things have happened in the last few years, and I think that I don't know exactly what the genesis of it was or what it is. I think there's a lot of people that are on the outside that doing what we're doing right now. We're talking on the air, and we're commenting and talking to fans, and I think there's a lot of people who are quote unquote, draft kings, and not that they're bad or anything, and all the other betting sites. They're all talking about, and I see Greeny sometimes playing golf. They're all talking about how you have to protect players. The protection of players has driven this theory that we're going to stop doing anything that's, I guess, what they would consider exhibition, right? They consider all this stuff exhibition. What they really should consider is that, hey, look, this is these guys' opportunity to actually get some real reps in so they can actually get ready to play. And I don't think people understand how hard it is to get ready to play. The transition from high school to college is tremendous. The transition from college to the NFL is tremendous. And even preseason to the season and season to the postseason, it's just a tremendous jump every time you do it, because you start to get the best of the best of the best every time you're up. So when they do these joint practices, it's closer to the days of what we did in training camp. So we could, they don't get to do 2-a-day practices in training camp like they used to, where you have, shells in the morning and full pads in the afternoon.
Sometimes 3-a-days, Howard.
Back at Coach Perkins at Alabama, man, I'm telling you right now, 3-a-day practices, I still can't remember. That's just why in the world I was playing football. I actually called my dad, said, man, you can come get me. But 3-a-day practices, but like it's harder to. And this is just opinion. This is not fact. So I don't want anybody going like what Howard Cross said. It's just harder to. It's hard to box. I'll use this boxing. It's hard to box without sparring. If you want to fight another person, you need to spar against somebody to get you used to taking a hit, dodging, how to use your leverage, how to lean on, how to fight back against. And it's harder and harder for guys to continue to, go. Like baseball's different. Baseball, you can be out in the outfield, nobody hits the ball to you, you don't have to run, but every once in a while you have to run. You can't really do that in football because you're running, get a break, but you're running. You get a break, but you're running, and sometimes you're getting hit, sometimes you're getting pulled, sometimes you're getting pushed, sometimes somebody's right in front of you, all over you, and it just takes more of your body and your leverage, getting used to leverage to do than people think. And I feel bad that we've come to an era where we're going to eliminate all the preseason games, because that's the real time when you can see how you can play. We're going to go to the joint practices, which is really good work, but no one's really watching you. And what I mean by that, there's no lights, there's no big cameras, there's the coach on your team telling you what's going on.
It's still not game conditions.
It's not, game-like conditions, and it's just harder. And I think that especially with the having more players on the team and more players on the squad, the active squad, the inactive squad, and then having what do you call the players? The other group of players. It's like 3 groups.
And the injured guys and the practice squad guys.
No, the active guys.
Oh, the inactive guys.
The inactive guys, which you don't play that day.
Right.
And then the guys who are on what squad is that called?
Practice squad.
Practice squad.
Yeah.
Okay. And the practice squad guys, they're getting reps in practice, kinda, but they're still not making contact and they're not going through things. And it's just, in my opinion, it's harder for them to do things, and that's we get a lot of quarterbacks injured across the league.
Oh, tell me about it.
We get a lot of guys that are getting down in their stance and trying to be ready to back up that hadn't had contact yet, and maybe have had 2 reps, or if they're starters, no reps because they didn't play in the preseason games. And you're letting that guy go against one of the fastest pass rushers on the edge coming off, and all he has been doing the whole time is, hey, I've been practicing running by people and not touching them.
We come from the same school, Howard. We come from the same school.
So it's just a lot, and it's good, but it's just a lot.
Let's quickly go to Phil in North Carolina. He's on the line before we take a break and talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Go ahead, Phil. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and hopefully you hear me well.
Yes, we do.
And Howard, yeah, good. Howard, congrats on being ranked in the top 100. You're one of my favorite players, one of my favorite, value picks. If I can use, I'm still, probably not the correct thing to say, but where you were drafted and I'm sure you wanted to get drafted higher, but where you were drafted and what you contributed was awesome. So
Appreciate that.
And yeah, you and like people like David Deal and Ahmad Bradshaw. Yeah. So which brings me to the thing. I haven't been able to weigh in on the Barkley thing. It's been you guys have been busy and whatever. And just to kind of put that in perspective, I remember when we first drafted him. Paul and I had some really good discussions, philosophical differences, you can say, about whether to draft somebody in the first running back that high. I'm just wondering if any, I'm not trying to call the gloat or anything, but I'm just wondering, and I'm trying to soften my view too, because I was like, no way draft a running back in the first. I'm trying to soften it a little, but I'm just curious, like from Paul, your perspective, have you rethought that, or you still feel strongly? And I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong, or you're the opposite, or whatever. I just any thought. And Howard, what was your? I never knew if I weighed in on you with that and what your thoughts were, and I'll take it off the air.
Okay, thanks for the call. I'll let you go first.
Well, first off, I love Mel Kiper. I've met him a few times, and I think that he's kind of even though he didn't create the draft, he created the draft fascination by being the guy who talked it up so much. And he was
Joe Bushbaum too.
And Joe Bushbaum, and Mel was the guy who said that you never take a running back in the first round. Mel said that. He said it a bunch of times. Mel used to do some scouting, some other stuff. He just said that he just didn't think the value was there for a running back in the first round. My view of it is totally different from probably anybody's, and my view is this. You take the best possible player you can get, and if you have 2 of them, you could have 3 of them. It doesn't matter. You take the best possible player you can get. And if there's a running back who ranks number 1 or number 2, and you're going to get him for a good 5 to 8 years, you've had a great player. If that player goes to the Pro Bowl several times, you've had a great player. You've had a great selection. The problem with it is that, again, we have outside voices always trying to tell you what you think you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. I think that Saquon had a pretty good career with the Giants. I think he was often injured, and I feel bad for him in that aspect, but I thought he had a pretty good career with the Giants. I think where Saquon got caught up in the market of running backs at the end of his stay here with the Giants, because I believe they tried to get him in the year prior.
Yes.
And he thought that there was more money out there, and then all of a sudden he finds out there is not more money out there for running backs, not just for him, but for anybody. I think that also I think that year there was a rumor floating around that they could trade Derrick Henry, and in that moment Derrick Henry wasn't the best back in the NFL, but he was the most productive running back in the NFL. He was, every year he was leading rusher in the league or something like every 2 or 3 years in a row. And at one of his years, they were like, we should probably trade him before while we can get something good for him. And I'm like, at that moment, that's when I'm like, oh, what are you offering me? Oh, cool, I'll take that. But that's what you get for it. And I think that people look at it like Christian, Eddie's kid.
McCaffrey.
McCaffrey. Christian, he went to Carolina. He was behind a bad line. He was behind, bad quarterback. And I feel bad I'm not beating on Carolina guys. I'm just saying bad quarterbacking, bad line, no receivers to mention except for Steve Smith. And Steve Smith was in the NFL Network at that time. So he moves to San Francisco, and all of a sudden he's like a great, physical, incredible specimen back. That's like the back of the league. They're hoping, Philadelphia's hoping that they'll get that out of Saquon. I think the injuries are not comparable. I think Christian was a little healthier than Saquon was. So I'm just hoping that Saquon stays healthy and enjoys his career, and has a good career. I'm not worried about all the other stuff.
We got to get to our Indianapolis Colts guest. I will address the Barkley question after we're done talking about the Colts, because they'll be playing the Giants on the weekend of December 28th here at the Meadowlands. That is week number 17.
Do they know it's outside?
Well, it will be outside, as our guest no doubt knows about playing outside. He certainly played enough of years outside. Kevin Bowen, former Colts tackle, and now a host on 107.5 The Fan in Indianapolis, joins us. And Kevin, thanks so much for the time. And, I can't promise you it's going to be pleasant here in December, because sometimes those Meadowlands winds can get pretty nasty.
Kevin, I can't believe you didn't have us in the Colts. I'd have loved to have been inside in December. I'm a sideline reporter. That's crazy out there.
Yeah, the Colts, I think they're outside. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say there's like 3 road games to end the year: Denver, Foxborough, and the Meadowlands. So, yeah, certainly not ideal from a climate standpoint.
Definitely not.
All right, well, let's go through what people can expect as the Colts open training camp. They will be late on the Giants' schedule, as I mentioned. But I guess any talk about this team has to start with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. We know about the injury last year. We also know they brought in veteran Joe Flacco, who helped get the Browns into the playoffs to be their number 2. So how does this quarterback situation look right now going into training camp, and can they keep Richardson healthy?
Yeah, it's certainly the multi-million-dollar question here for this franchise. He played 173 snaps last season. He only started and finished 1 game, 4 different injuries, and then ultimately it was that right shoulder injury that put his season to rest in Week 6. So just a huge, huge bummer on many levels. I would say the most important is, for those that followed Richardson's college career a lot, he didn't play really much at Florida at all. Really just kind of 1 season down there in college, entered the NFL, one of kind of the smallest resumes, fewest pass attempts, et cetera, of really any quarterback, especially a first-round draft pick, let alone number 4 overall. So, again, 9 wins with Shane Steichen last year. There's a lot to, like about that. But the major, major disappointment is Richardson's health and the lack of reps, and now the question of a guy that plays the style that he does. How healthy can you keep him?
Well, to follow up on that, I know Richardson is in question a little bit. I know they don't want to be in question, but he's kind of in question because most of the wins came when you had your backup quarterback in. So that kind of adds to okay, you had some success with somebody that's a different style player as Richardson. Richardson is that dynamic runner, thrower guy. He can do a little bit of everything. And then you kind of had to slide back into a more of a traditional style quarterback once he got injured. How does that kind of play in? What kind of pressure do you think that's going to put on Richardson, starting this year?
Yeah, stylistically, I think you got to give a lot of credit to Shane Steichen for, making a Richardson-centric playbook. And somewhat of a seamless transition to Gardner Minshew, who, again, stylistically is nothing like Richardson. Now, I think the odd thing about Joe Flacco that some people might not recognize right away is certainly from a run option standpoint, all of that goes out the window if and when you need to rely
don't do
Flacco.
Joe like that.
Trust me, the Colts have had their slow-footed quarterbacks from Peyton Manning to Phillip Rivers to Matt Ryan. But I do think from an arm standpoint, him and Richardson actually are pretty similar. It was kind of funny. You watch him in the spring, and Flacco could still uncork it. And obviously we saw it with Cleveland last year. But there was none of that really when Gardner Minshew even took over for Richardson last year. So, of course, the multiplicity and the ability to do the zone reads, the read option, again, if and when you have to go to Flacco, that will be an issue. But, from a challenge people vertically, try to get the ball down the field, That was different with Minshew last year, but with Flacco, you shouldn't have too much to worry about in that department.
We know Jonathan Taylor's had some nicks and bruises, and it's now going on 3 seasons since he led the National Football League in rushing. Mm-hmm. How will his role develop as you get into the regular season this year?
Well, certainly a lot to prove for him. Last year he had all the contract drama and then, battled some injuries. Now, he was outstanding in the season finale game. That was, Colts and Texans winner get in, and Houston ultimately won that game. But Taylor had 30 carries for 180-some yards and really almost single-handedly took the Colts to the playoffs there in that game. So I do think he has got that bell cow ability, and, again, you're paying him to be that. I heard you guys talking about Christian McCaffrey before I hopped on. He's not much of a third-down guy, Taylor, so he's really got to bring it for you on those early downs. He can still impact a little bit on the passing downs, but not really known as that type of guy. So I do think a healthy Richardson and a healthy Taylor duo would rank right up there in the NFL with just about any quarterback, running back duos. I think that should strike some fear in opposing defenses, and I think it's really important the Colts have that and lean on that because I do think there are some questions from a passing game standpoint.
Now, your offensive line is pretty healthy, right? That's the guys who are going to be standing in front of that quarterback and running back. They're supposed to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, it's an offensive line group that struggled in 2022. Kind of stuck with the same personnel, though, and had a really nice bounce-back year. They've invested a lot in it. They've got a top 10 pick in Quentin Nelson at left guard, a top 20 pick in Ryan Kelly at center. Not a lot of teams kind of operate in that mode. So it's a group that, again, bounced back nicely last season. Now, sure, blocking for Minshew versus blocking for Richardson or protecting for him is a little different. Just then, your quarterback can escape, and that can be a good thing, and at times that can be a bad thing, just from where he's at from a pocket standpoint. So, yeah, the O-line had a really important bounce-back year. It's certainly kind of the pillars of how Chris Fowler, their GM, wants to build things. So really important for them to get back to playing at a pretty acceptable level.
Hey, Kevin, before I let Howard ask you about the receiving core, I want to go back to the line for just a second. Last year, there was a lot made when Dexter Lawrence dominated Quentin Nelson in their game because we all know how highly Nelson is thought of around the league. And to see Dexter Lawrence, who's also highly thought of, do what he did to him, and there was one particular play where he just absolutely plowed him over to get into the backfield.
Picked him up.
How much play did that get in Indianapolis? Because here in New York, even though we have great respect for Dexter, there were still people dropping their jaw like, wow, look what he did to Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, I would say that the dysfunction of that 2022 Colts season was at such a high mountaintop level at that point. It probably got lost a little bit in the combo. I mean, individually, several Colts, and Nelson would be one of them, had really poor 2022 campaigns. For those that are unfamiliar, that was the Matt Ryan year, the Frank Reich gets fired, and Jeff Saturday is in as the interim coach. And honestly, what probably stands out to me most about that game is, first off, the Giants thoroughly dominated Indy, but Kayvon Thibodeau had that sack of Nick Foles in that game and kind of did some snow angels on the field. And, at least here locally, what we discussed that next morning. And, here's Jeff Saturday trying to install a different culture and all this stuff. And, you have, an act where I would think a lot of guys would react to that play in much of a different manner had they seen that happen. And nobody on the Colts came to full defense or, did something to Thibodeau or even try to confront him in any manner. So, for me, it was just kind of the cherry on top of, really one of the worst seasons in franchise history there, capped by what New York did to Indy there in late in 2022.
Well, that I can understand. I've been on some moments like that myself. I know your receivers are pretty good. Pittman was a 1,000-yard receiver. You got another kid in Downs in there. Supposed to be pretty decent. Your tight end is even your tight end's even a good player. I think he's probably a little better than people realize. What do you expect from, if it's Richardson, if he's healthy, the way he kind of plays, he's a runner, he's a slasher, he gets the ball down. Do you expect the yards to go up for these guys that are catching the ball?
Yeah, I think the one element of the passing offense that, again, hasn't really been tapped into in recent years and should be a strength of Richardson is the ability to challenge things vertically. The Colts have not been able to have that sort of big-arm quarterback in quite some time, and I think it allows their teams to kind of, cheat a safety up and, commit to more bodies. So, with Richardson, again, he obviously brings that run dynamic. teams I think ideally would load the box. But if Richardson can prove, like he did a little bit at Florida, that while he might be a bit inaccurate, from a completion percentage standpoint, if he can tap into a couple balls again down the field, now you got to think twice about those things. So I think that element of the passing offense is kind of the biggest thing that at least I'm watching for. Again, it might not be a bunch of singles and doubles from a baseball analogy standpoint, but as long as you can keep the strikeouts to a minimum with turnovers and you can, hit a couple to the fence or over, that can be huge. And, 10 play, 12 play, 80-yard drives are hard to come by.
That's
so if
true.
you can slide in a big chunk or two here or there, it can obviously do wonders for your offense.
Well, Kevin, we know the game is always won and lost in the trenches. Let's flip it to defense. We know DeForest Buckner's been doing it in this league for a long time. Kwity Paye seemed to have, according to the stats, somewhat of a breakout year last season. What is his upside? Does the arrow continue to point toward the sky for him?
Yeah, the Colts are very optimistic about Kwity. I know sack numbers. It was at a nice level last season. I forget the exact number, maybe right around 7 or 8. But I do think from a consistent pressure standpoint, it still doesn't rank at the level that you would like for a first-round pick, or even a guy that they picked up as fifth-year option. That's it's a notable pay increase as well. So, they drafted Latu out of UCLA as the 15th overall pick, and I think some of that's because, obviously it's a pass rusher they view as an elite rusher, and wildly he became the first defensive player taken in that draft with all the offensive run that we had. But still, I think out of Paye, they just like a little bit more of consistent pressure. Really good on the rundowns, but a little bit more on that end, I think, would be desired.
How much trepidation was there out in Indianapolis about taking Latu, understanding that he had that neck thing in college and at one point had retired?
Yeah, that is certainly the biggest question. I mean, anytime you have, such a awful injury that leads to a forced medical retirement for multiple seasons, that obviously is going to get your attention. Now, the fact that he played every game at UCLA the last 2 years certainly has to stand out and kind of calm some of that. It's probably one of the harder questions I get. It's like, well, obviously I don't have access to all these medical records that the Colts and the 31 other NFL teams did. It sounded like there were some teams that definitely red flagged him, but there was also, I think, a majority of the NFL that felt good enough about taking him. And again, I'll put on a medical hat here, which I'm certainly not educated enough to do, but maybe it's one of those things where, all right, you might not get 10 to 12 years out of them, but can you get a 6 to 7 year career out of them? And if he can bring the pass rush production that he's had the last couple of seasons and do that very early in his NFL career, you can live with that. And so I think maybe that could be some of the thought as well.
Well, as we were predicting for teams and stuff, we were thinking maybe you guys are going to go DB. You guys are kind of like, maybe even a little short-handed at cornerback out there. So Latu coming in when you're like ranked in, I guess, the top 5 and in quarterback pressures was an interesting pick. When the Colts really need cornerback help.
Yeah, I would say that was maybe the biggest issue fans had with the selection. Now, again, like I was saying, and you guys know this, you were a part of it, how that draft played out. I don't think anybody thought the Colts would get on the clock at 15 and have every defensive player still available to them. So, maybe in a normal draft, whatever, if Latu goes 8th or 10th, does that shift the Colts' thinking a little bit here? So, that is certainly a fair question to ask, and I think it's probably the biggest overall non-Richardson question coming into this season. Where are the Colts at from a secondary standpoint? They're very young and inexperienced at corner and safety. Depth, are question marks as well. So, how much can teams test that? They open up the season with C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love the first 2 weeks, so you're certainly going to feel some of that right out of the gate. Definitely be a major question.
I'm following up. You guys had some really good games, but the defense was struggling sometimes, and they could score points on you guys, and that's a tough thing. That's why I was wondering, who's really going to be the 2 starting cornerbacks? Is it going to be one of the kids you drafted last year, even though they weren't first-round picks, or is it going to be who's going to be the first round? Who's going to be in there in the number 1 spot?
Yeah, I would say that it's going to be Juju Brents, their second-round pick from last year. He's actually an Indy product and played collegiately at Iowa, then at Kansas State. That's where I think they would go in terms of the other outside corner. Kenny Moore is a guy that's been a really good pro for them for years, and he's probably more slot, but plays outside of their base. So that's a question mark. And then I would say safety is even the bigger question. They don't have a ton there. Julian Blackmon has, again, been really good for them, but he's had some injuries in his career, and he only re-signed on a one-year deal. So to me, Gus Bradley's third season, the pass rush can obviously help you out to cover up some of that. But if that pass rush can't get home, the quarterback slate is much more difficult this year for the Colts than it was last year. They played backups or rookies in 10 of their 17 games, quarterback-wise, last year.
Yep.
On paper, they definitely don't have that this season. How they handle that, how they defend that will be a big question.
Kevin, I may answer my own question here, but I'm going to flip it here just a tad and ask you about a former Colt who's with the Giants. Bobby Okereke, we thought had a Pro Bowl level type of season last year for the Giants. I'll be frank with you. I don't understand how in the world the Colts let him get away. Now, maybe they had cap trouble, but we all know teams can finagle their numbers somewhat. Are you much surprised that Okereke came here to the Giants and became just a dynamite middle linebacker?
No, I'm not surprised. I thought he was flashing that sort of potential here in Indy. He's a third-round pick. I think that's a high pick for a linebacker. But to what you just brought up, it was finances. And I get you can finagle the cap. The Colts are certainly not a team that finagles it in quite an extreme way like some other teams do in the NFL. And linebacker has actually been the position they've drafted the best under Chris Ballard. You think about Darius Leonard changed his name to Shaquille a couple years ago. And right now, Zaire Franklin, a 7th-round pick, E.J. Speed, a 5th-round pick. They form a pretty good duo right now. So I just think a little bit of this, linebacker was kind of turned into, well, you need 3 to kind of now you need 2 with how much nickel has played in the NFL. And it was, one of those things where you sometimes see this in free agency. All right, priorities are elsewhere. Can Okereke pass the torch to Speed? And that's exactly what he did. So, yeah, to me, it's actually one of the rare kind of win-wins in free agency of the Colts needed to use that money elsewhere. Okereke obviously has gone on to have a really nice career with the Giants, but at the same time, I don't think that position has dropped off too much for the Colts.
Nice.
Great stuff. That's Kevin Bowen, former Colts offensive tackle, now a host on 107.5 The Fan in Indianapolis. Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you later on in the year.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me.
Be well. Great stuff. And again, this is part of what we see in today's NFL. Because of the cap and because of contracts, football guys, coaches, GMs, scouts, they're forced to let talented players get away because of the numbers.
I mean, what could he have been asking for? Like, he's such a good player. Didn't miss Didn't miss a down. Played every down last year. Out on the field, leads the team in tackle. That's kind of hard to reproduce. Even though he is correct, they did do a good job bringing another player in to play the inside backer position. I also think that, when you think about who they're paying or what they're paying, not to have two true corners and 2 true safeties on the field. I mean, they gave up some big points last year, and that's what cost them. Every time they got into a double-digit deficit, they never got back from it, which it's common in the NFL not to get back from it. But that was the difference between them, making and not making the playoffs. I think it came down to the last game of the season against Houston, and C.J. Stroud got them again.
Again, they'll be playing the Giants on the weekend of December 28th. That game is one of those flex games that can be moved to Saturday or Sunday. It'll be here at MetLife Stadium. Interesting that the Colts will be here that weekend. It's also the anniversary of the greatest game ever played.
Nice.
1958 when the Colts beat the Giants.
Are we going to be wearing those wonderful
championship
jerseys that night? Or won't we wearing those?
No, I don't think so. Okay. They haven't announced the potential second game that they'll wear the throwbacks, or the obviously special commemorative jerseys.
I have nothing to do with it.
I understand, Howard. That's okay. By the way, folks, just a couple of reminders, and I know we still have a little bit of time if you want to get in, 201-939-4513. And Howard, this may interest you. I know how much you love to exercise.
Is it golf?
No, it's not.
Oh.
The Giants Foundation will host a 5K Racing Kids Run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th. That's at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative T-shirt, and after the race, stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. You can spin tunes, couldn't you?
Yeah, I can spin tunes.
There you go. Register
I'm
now.
not running nowhere. I'm not running out of a burning building right now. Are you kidding me?
Go to Giants.com/5K for more information and to register. Of course, the Giants Huddle podcast has all kinds of Giants and NFL personnel here from all kinds of analysts. Right now, you get position-by-position breakdowns that John did with some of the players. Go to Giants.com/podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a positive review so that we know you guys really do enjoy the program. Also, you can get your Giants season ticket memberships for 2024. Stay connected to the club all year round. Memberships are available. To learn all about those details, visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And Giants TV is the official connected TV streaming app. It brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. Whew, got those out of the way.
That's a lot.
201-939-4513. We've got about 10 minutes to go, folks. If you want to chime in, here's a chance. We got the live phones up and running again as we prepare for the opening of training camp, which officially begins on Wednesday, August, not even August,
Wow.
July 24th. The calendar, Howard,
I'm not even sure what's going on with you.
Yeah,
right now.
I'm going nuts here. July 24th, Wednesday, July 24th. Howard, this calendar went by so fast. It seemed like just yesterday we're wrapping up the season, and now here we are in the middle of this broiling summer. I don't know how it went so quick.
Time. Just time. I don't know.
I don't know either. And by the way, just for you folks out there,
I have no idea.
you'll be seeing shortly, because I know you gave me a tip-off, your son Howard's coming up
Yes,
to
he
promote the Notre Dame Navy game that's going to be played this year at MetLife Stadium, which
At
means you
MetLife
get to
Stadium.
see him play
I
again.
get to see him play again.
How cool is that?
It is going to be great.
Do you know the date of that game?
I don't have any tickets. Don't call me. Yeah, but go ahead.
Your family's going to need all of them anyway.
Nope,
Do you know the date of the game?
No, I think it's before we play Pittsburgh Monday night, so I'm
Okay.
not sure what day that is. It's going to be that Saturday, though.
And what I think is cool, though, is that you told me Howard's coming up. He's going to be part of the PR
He's
advancing the game.
He's up this weekend, actually. I think he gets here Thursday afternoon. They do some stuff with ESPN and at the Zone, do some photo ops, and because they're going to be here at MetLife and at Yankee Stadium playing Army the same year. They're
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Both of the military teams. And right across the river.
right across the river. So they're going to do some promotional work for him and go to some spots and sign some autographs and do the rounds. Like I guess they call it the car wash. They're going to do the car wash up
All
here.
right.
So that's going to be pretty cool.
Well, you know,
for him.
Notre Dame has a huge following all over the country, so it doesn't surprise me they
I
play
do
two
hear that.
games here.
I do hear that.
Are you going to go to the Army game too?
It depends on who we play the next day. Where
Oh,
it's at.
okay.
But we don't have any real West Coast games, so I can get around pretty easy this year.
I know.
Yeah, I can
The
get around
travel's going to be much, much better than it was.
It's going to be easy
last season.
except for Thanksgiving. If we can get that early game on Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
that'd be the best.
Well, you remember last year we had the Arizona-San Francisco trip, and we had to stay out in
Yeah.
Tempe.
Yeah, I remember
Because
that.
so we doubled up. Although the league was nice enough to honor John Mara's request to give us a Thursday game so that we had a weekend and a Thursday, which made it a little bit shorter.
It made it nice.
Yeah, it was better. It
cool.
was better. Instead of coming back and forth from the coast. Oh,
Yeah, we've
that's
done that
brutal.
before.
That's brutal. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. I did want to ask you one other thing, Howard, as we get ready for training camp next week. I'm not sure if you're going to be on before camp opens or if you're on afterwards.
I don't know.
But I did want to ask you, because I've had people ask me about this now for probably the last month.
Okay.
They wanted to know if there was one other position on the Giants depth chart. If you had a few extra bucks in your pocket and said, you know what, I'd like to see if I could get a relatively inexpensive veteran to help out the depth chart in that one spot.
See,
What would it be for you?
Here's the thing. I wouldn't want to get an inexpensive guy or even an expensive guy.
Well, you can't afford an expensive guy.
Just hold on. Just playing with the theory of your question.
Okay.
Because I don't want to pay for somebody who potentially we're not going to need. He's just out there. And I'm not trying to, short any backups or anything like that. I would rather have traded for somebody that was somebody that we needed, if there was somebody that we really needed.
Okay.
right? Somebody that you can like, okay, this guy's going to be we're writing him into this position, and he's going to play for the rest of the year. He's going to be healthy the whole year, and he's going to help us out the whole year.
Okay.
That's what I would do in any situation when it comes down to trying to bring players in. And I know you bring players in because you need to fill some spots and get some depth at positions and stuff, and you hope that the guys you have are going to play as the best they're going to play. But if a guy's been often injured and I bring a guy in, I'm bringing a guy in to play. Because I'm like, you're going to play – you may play 6 games this year, and we're not bringing somebody in. We're going to pay him well. We know he's going to play, and we're going to have him ready to go because we're looking forward to him to get on the field. That's how I would have done it. But I'm different because I look at it differently.
I will rephrase the question.
Okay.
Is there a spot on the depth chart where you would like to have added a fortifying factor?
A fortifying factor? I don't really know. I think a fortifying factor. But we've got everybody here now, so if I say something, it kind of really mean to somebody. That's how I kind of feel about that.
Okay.
There's a couple spots, yeah, I got in my mind. But
I'll say this, and I've said it on Big Blue Kickoff Live many times. I'd like to see a big power back to be added to the running back room because as it stands now, we've got some guys who have maneuverability and some quickness and some really good hands, but there's no real monster bulldozer bowling ball kind of running back who can push the pile. I still think they could use a power back in that room.
Is Christian McCaffrey a power back?
No, he is not.
He does well, though.
Well, yeah, they have a fullback on that team, though.
Okay, well, you don't really need a fullback if you got the right kind of blocking scheme in front of them.
Are you confident that this team will block all of its 3rd and 1s correctly? They haven't done it in a while.
Well, if they're not blocking 3rd and 1s, they're not blocking 1st and 10s either. So if you want to go there, don't. If you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. But I don't want to talk about it. So
okay, Howard.
So you told me not to. I won't say
no,
nothing
I
bad
get
about
you.
anybody.
I get you. I get you. I do think that right now that's a component that's not in the room that I wouldn't mind seeing because, quite frankly, they did get some height in the wide receiver room, and it remains to be seen if these guys will make the team. But Bryce Ford-Wheaton is back off of his ACL last year. Allen Robinson was added during free agency, so they did add some height. They even added Miles Boykin from the Steelers, who's basically a special teams guy, but he has a lot of height. Even Giles has some height. So they did add height to the wide receiver room. I like to see those components.
What does height in the wide receiver room got to do with anything?
Oh, I'm big on having at least one Spider-Man wide receiver in the roster.
Oh.
I like to have the salad bar in that room. I don't want just tomatoes or just cucumbers. I like to have some other things in there too.
So Neighbors, Hyatt, Robinson, they're not big enough for you.
Well, they're on the smaller side. And if your entire room...
What about Slayton?
He's medium.
Medium?
He's 6'2". He's medium.
Okay.
See, here's the thing, Howard. I've always favored having a mixture because I always believe that one of the reasons Plexico Burress, in addition to his incredible talent, became such a difference maker for this team is that he allowed Eli to be able to see that target and have a big, large radius with a wingspan that Eli could just throw that ball up there and know his guy could go get it. And that's what you get when you get one of those skyscrapers. Look, you're 6'5".
I don't want to.
You were a big target for Phil.
I don't want to do this to you, but Brady won 7.
Right? I know.
He had one tall receiver the whole time. That guy was in Tampa.
I know. I understand.
He had Randy Moss.
Randy Moss
for a short time
did not win the Super Bowl with him.
No, he didn't.
There you go. I ain't
but
mad
I appreciate that,
I love
Pearson.
Randy, but no.
Look, this is a preference.
I think
this is a personal preference.
Patrick Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I get it.
He ain't got no tall receivers.
I understand that.
I'm just saying.
It's a personal preference. It's not a mandatory. It's a personal preference.
It's like the 50-50 ball. That's where it's all comes from. Pearson's like, no, don't do it.
We're not getting into 50-50 balls.
Folks,
the last minute of the show.
That'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff. You notice I didn't go there, Pearson. Okay?
That's what it sounded like you were going, though.
I did not. I did
tall
not.
Spider-Man guy that could get that
That's
50-50 ball. He's not open.
That is Super Bowl champion Howard Cross. He's at Howard Cross 87. I am Paul Dottino at Giants WFAN. And this has been another wonderful, packed, fun-filled edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We appreciate your time today, as always, previewing the Colts, etc. And we will be back tomorrow for another edition, and we will preview another one of the Giants' opponents. This program can be caught on the archive as part of the Giants podcast platforms everywhere and at giants.com/podcasts. For Howard Cross, again, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.